My name is Kate, and tonight my world burned. Rogues poured through our mountain village like a black flood, tearing down homes and howling for blood. I fought until my arms shook and smoke seared my lungs, until it was clear staying meant dying on a pile of bodies no one would bury. So I ran. Branches clawed my skin as I tore through the forest, their paws thundering behind me, their snarls snapping at my heels. I burst from the trees into a moonlit clearing and skidded to a halt. Warriors in dark leather and iron turned as one, blades half drawn. At their center stood a man in black armor, long hair bound back, power rolling off him in cold waves. The rogue slowed at the sight of him. That hesitation was the only mercy I would get. Before fear could choke me, I crossed the distance, fisted his armor, and dragged myself up to his mouth. "Please be my husband," I whispered, my lips brushing his. Then I kissed him, like he was already mine, staking my life on a stranger whose answer could save me, or kill me. Fire woke me, not the crackle of cooking flames in the communal pit, but a roar, a hungry, devouring sound that did not belong inside our quiet mountain hollow. Heat rolled through the thin walls of my hut, turning my skin slick and my lungs tight. For one dazed heartbeat, I thought I was dreaming. Then someone screamed. I was on my feet before the sound finished. Years of drills snapped into place, every lesson my pack had taught me about surviving raids clawing to the surface. I snatched the knife from beneath my pallet and kicked my door open. The night outside was red. Roofs burned like torches, sparks climbing toward the stars. Smoke crawled low over the ground, thick and choking, stinging my eyes. Wolves were already shifting on the main path, bodies stretching and cracking as they took their war forms. A child sobbed somewhere to my left, cut off by a guttural snarl. "Rogues!" someone shouted. "To the line! To the line!" My heart slammed once, hard. Rogues, here. I didn't run for the woods. I ran toward the screaming. The first rogue I saw was already inside the circle of our homes, his fur a filthy gray, muzzle dripping with blood that wasn't his. He had one of our younger wolves pinned, claws pressing into the girl's throat. "Hey!" I roared. He turned toward me, eyes wild and bright. I lunged before fear could shake my aim, driving my knife into the soft place beneath his jaw. Hot blood sprayed my hand. He collapsed, taking me down with him. I rolled free, wrenching the blade loose as he twitched once and went still. The girl scrambled away on shaking limbs. "Thank you," she gasped. "Run to the river," I snapped, shoving her toward the narrow path that led down the slope. "Stay low. Don't stop." Another howl rose from beyond the outer huts, answered by three more, too many, too close. Shadows moved between the burning houses, shapes that were not ours. I sprinted toward the main square. Our alpha stood there, half shifted, fur bristling along his arms, claws curved and bloody. A ring of warriors held the line with him, teeth bared, backs to the elders' huts as they faced the chaos spilling in from the forest. Rogues crashed against them like waves, snarling, snapping, clawing for purchase. I slid into the gap at my alpha's left, knife up, chest heaving. "Kate!" he snarled. "To the shelters, now!" I slashed at a rogue that lunged for his exposed side, carving a line across the intruder's flank. The rogue yelped, staggering back. "With respect," I panted. "No." There was no time to argue. Another rogue hit the line. I moved without thinking, ducking under a swipe, driving my knife into a rib cage, feeling it scrape bone. Pain blossomed along my shoulder as claws tore shallowly across my skin, but I stayed on my feet, teeth clenched against the sting. We fought like that for what felt like hours, and was probably only minutes. The air turned thick with smoke and blood, the ground slippery beneath my boots. My muscles burned. My lungs begged for clean air that didn't exist. Still, we held. Then the outer watchtower collapsed with a scream of breaking wood. Flames whooshed up where the lookout post had stood, outlining a new wave of rogues pouring in from the tree line, twice as many as before. My alpha's gaze swept the battlefield. I saw the moment his hope died. "Fall back!" he roared. "To the eastern path! Get them out!" Retreat. The word cut deeper than any claw, but I didn't argue. He turned, shoving the nearest wounded toward the narrow trail that led down the mountainside, away from the main road the rogues were flooding through. We ran, half choking, half dragging those who stumbled. The fires lit our path in flickering orange, throwing monstrous shadows across the rock. Then, ahead, someone screamed, "They're here too!" We skidded to a halt. The eastern path was blocked. Rogues loped up the slope from below, teeth gleaming, eyes alight with cruel satisfaction. They had flanked us, cutting off our escape. We were caught between fire and fangs. My alpha swore, a raw, broken sound. "Back to the village! Form a circle!" Wolves pivoted, trying to gather, to form some kind of defense. It was useless. Rogues crashed into us from both sides now. I watched one of my packmates go down under 3 bodies, their snarls drowning his. "Kate!" my alpha shouted. His hand clamped around my arm, claws pricking my skin. "Run. Take the North Ravine and don't look back. I won't leave you." My throat burned with smoke and denial. "You will." His eyes locked on mine, wild and bright. "You're fast. You know the trails. Someone has to live to tell what happened here. Go." He shoved me so hard I stumbled. A rogue launched at him while his back was turned. I lunged, but another body slammed into mine, knocking me sideways. The world spun fire, fur, blood, teeth. When I forced myself up, breath ragged, I saw my alpha vanish beneath a heap of rogues. Something inside me tore. A howl ripped from my chest, shattering against the night. A claw raked my side, hot pain blooming, forcing the air from my lungs. I staggered, vision tunneling. The world narrowed to one simple truth. If I stayed, I died here with them. Dying wouldn't bring them back. Living might avenge them. I turned and ran. The North Ravine was a narrow cut in the mountain, half hidden by thorn bushes and stones. I dove into it, branches whipping my face, roots clawing at my boots. The roar of battle faded behind me, replaced by the thunder of paws on rock. They were following. "Kate!" a voice howled from the darkness, not one of ours, a rogue, stretching my name into a taunt. "Silver blood, run for us." They knew my name. Fear sliced through my anger, cold and sharp. How? Why? A low branch caught my shoulder, tearing open the earlier wound. Warm blood soaked my sleeve, slicking my fingers on the knife hilt. My lungs burned. Each breath scraped like broken glass. Still, I ran. "Almost there," I rasped to myself. "Keep moving. One more step." And another. The trees thickened, then suddenly thinned. I burst through the final ring of pines and stumbled into open ground. I skidded to a stop. Ahead lay a wide clearing bathed in silver moonlight. Not empty, never that. A ring of warriors stood there, armored in black leather and iron, blades glinting in their hands. They turned as one, eyes sharpening, bodies tensing at the sight of the blood-stained stranger who had just crashed into their midst. At their center stood a man. He was taller than the others, broader through the shoulders, his dark armor fitted like a second skin. His long hair was bound back from a hard, beautiful face, the moon catching on the metal at his shoulders, painting him in cold light. Power rolled from him in steady waves, making the air itself feel thicker. Behind me, branches snapped. A growl rolled across the clearing as the first rogue broke through the trees. The black-armored man's gaze flicked past me to the threat at my back. His warriors shifted, ready to strike, waiting on his word. I had seconds, maybe less. Run? To where? Back to the monsters hunting me? Beg these strangers for mercy and hope they didn't hand me over? No. If I wanted to live, I needed more than mercy. I needed leverage. A thought sparked, wild and reckless. Claim him or die. I moved before fear could argue. I closed the distance between us in a rush, boots slipping on grass. Gasps rippled through the circle as I grabbed fistfuls of black armor, the cold metal unyielding beneath my bloody fingers. His eyes widened, more in surprise than outrage. I rose onto my toes, tugging him down to me. "Please be my husband," I whispered, my breath shaking against his mouth. Then I kissed him like he already was. His lips were cold steel under mine. For a breath, the clearing went silent. No snarls, no shouts, just the thunder of my own pulse and the weight of a stranger's armor under my shaking hands. Then his hand closed around the back of my neck. Gasps hissed through the circle of warriors. I braced for the crack of my spine, the shove that would fling me back toward the rogues. Instead, his fingers tightened, anchoring me in place as he kissed me back. It wasn't gentle. His mouth moved over mine with hard, controlled possession, like he'd decided in that instant to make my madness true. Heat punched through the fear in my chest. My knees almost buckled. When he finally pulled away, I was panting, staring into eyes the color of storm clouds over stone. He turned his head slightly, still holding me. "Touch my wife," he said, voice low and lethal, "and you die where you stand." The words rolled across the clearing like a commandment. Behind me, the rogues hesitated. I could feel their confusion prickling along my spine, the way their snarls faltered. Blackstone, my mind supplied, remembering old stories. A border pack with a reputation for ruthless defense. So that was where I'd fallen. One of the rogues stepped forward, a scar cutting through the fur along his muzzle. His gaze slid over the circle of warriors and landed on the man holding me. "Alpha of Blackstone," he growled. "This is not your fight." "It became mine," the stranger said, "the moment you chased my mate across my border." "Mate." The word rang in my ears like a struck bell. His warriors stiffened. Some looked at me with open disbelief, others with swift calculation, but not one of them moved to challenge him. The scarred rogue's eyes narrowed. Slowly, deliberately, he looked from the stranger to me. For a heartbeat, everything else faded: the warriors, the flames far in the distance, the stench of smoke clinging to my skin. There was only that feral gaze and the certainty that he knew exactly who I was. "We will come for you, Silver Blood," he said softly. "No wall, no king will keep you from us." My stomach turned to ice. The Blackstone warriors took a single step forward as one, a wall of iron and muscle. The scarred rogue backed away, lips peeling off his teeth in a promise rather than a retreat. Then he flicked his tail and melted into the shadows. The others followed, vanishing into the trees as if the forest had swallowed them whole. Only when their howls faded did the stranger release my neck. I stumbled back a pace, suddenly aware of how close I'd been pressed to his chest, of how his armor had bruised the lines of my body. My lips tingled, my heart hammered so hard it hurt. The circle of warriors stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Alpha," one began. "Later," the man cut in. His gaze never left my face. We returned to the fortress. Now, no one argued. 2 warriors moved to flank me. Instinct snarled in my chest at the idea of being herded, but my legs had turned to wet clay. If they hadn't been there, I might have fallen. The stranger, my supposed husband, the mad part of me whispered, turned and strode toward the far edge of the clearing. The warriors parted for him. I followed because there was nowhere else to go. The fortress rose from the cliffs like a carved piece of night. High walls of dark stone, jagged towers pointing toward the sky, banners hanging limp in the wind. By the time we passed through the iron gates, my wounds throbbed in dull rhythm with my heartbeat, and every breath tasted of smoke and blood. Inside, the air was cooler but no kinder. Torches guttered along the corridors, throwing jagged shadows across worn stone. Warriors peeled away in 2s and 3s as we walked, until it was just him and me and the echo of our footsteps. We stopped in a narrow hallway lined with closed doors. He turned. I barely had time to register the movement before he stepped into my space, one hand slamming against the wall beside my head, the other catching my shoulder. My back hit stone. Pain flared along my side where claws had raked me earlier. I swallowed a flinch and met his eyes. Up close, he was even more devastating. Broad shoulders, jaw cut from granite, lips still reddened from my kiss. Power coiled around him, heavy and instinctive, the kind that made lesser wolves want to bow or bare their throats. I did neither. "Who sent you?" he asked. The softness of his voice made it more dangerous. "Which pack?" "My own," I said. "What's left of it?" "And where is that?" "Burning." The word came out like broken glass. Or already ash. Something flickered in his gaze, there and gone. "You crossed into my territory with rogues at your heels and forced my hand in front of my warriors. You claimed me as your husband." His eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because I wanted to live." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." His fingers tightened on my shoulder, not quite enough to bruise, just enough to remind me how easily he could. "You know what you did out there? You used my name as a shield. You wrapped yourself in my authority in front of enemies and my own wolves. Do you understand the weight of that?" "Yes," I said. "That's why I did it." He went very still. I forced myself to keep speaking, to push through the trembling in my hands. You looked like someone they would think twice about crossing. I had seconds to choose between dying in the dirt or tying myself to a stranger who might be strong enough to keep them off me. I chose the stranger. Me, he said quietly. You, I agreed. You were standing there with an army and a reputation. I grabbed what I could reach. His jaw flexed. And if I had decided to hand you back? To let the rogues tear you apart as a warning not to trespass on my lands? I lifted my chin. Then I would have died knowing I tried every weapon I had. You had no weapons. Didn't I? I held his gaze. You kissed me back. Silence stretched between us, thick and taut. His eyes darkened, not with anger at least, not only that. Something searching lurked there, as if he were trying to peel me open and see what lay underneath. I did it to protect my pack, he said at last. Nothing more. If they believe you're my mate, they will hesitate to touch you. They will hesitate to challenge me so directly. Then it worked for both of us. His hand moved from my shoulder to my throat, thumb pressing lightly against my pulse, not choking, measuring. You are bold for an omega, he murmured. You are slow to kill for an alpha. I shot back before I could stop myself. The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile. More like the ghost of one he didn't trust himself to give. You don't fear me? I fear many things, I said. Fire, rogues, empty graves. But you? Not yet. If you wanted me dead, I would be. His fingers tightened, then eased, as if he were reminding himself of his own control. Listen to me, Kate. The way he said my name vibrated through my bones. You forced a claim in front of my warriors. As of this moment, the Blackstone Pack believes you are under my protection. That means your actions reflect on me. If you betray my trust, aid my enemies, or endanger my wolves, I will end you. Mate or not. There was no threat in his tone, just a flat, lethal promise. I swallowed, heat prickling the back of my eyes, not from fear, but from the weight of everything I'd lost, everything I still had left to do. Understood, I said softly. I don't expect you to trust me. I don't trust you either. His brows lifted. But I know this much, I continued. The rogues who burned my home are still out there. They knew my name. They were hunting me. His gaze sharpened. So you can threaten me all you like, Your Majesty, I said, letting the title drip from my tongue like something sharp and new. It doesn't change what I want. And what is that? He asked. I met his eyes, letting him see the scorched earth inside me. Tell me how to kill the wolves who destroyed my home, I said. Then we can decide whether you're my husband or just my weapon. They gave me a room fit for a queen. It didn't stop me from smelling of smoke. Servants led me through the fortress after Robert left me, pinned against the wall with promises and threats still ringing in my ears. They said little, eyes sliding over me with the quick, sharp curiosity reserved for dangerous things. In the royal wing, the air tasted different, less of sweat and steel, more of beeswax, lavender, and power. My lady, one of them murmured, pushing open a heavy oak door. Your chambers. My chambers. As if I had grown them from stone myself. The room was larger than my entire hut back home. Tapestries muffled the cold walls, a thick fur rug sprawled before a hearth already crackling with fire. A bed big enough for 3 wolves dominated the far corner, all carved posts and dark blankets. The clothes chest at its foot was already half open, silks and velvets spilling out like spilled wine. I stood just inside the threshold, fingers sticky with dried blood, boots leaving black smudges on their precious rug. Do you require anything else, my lady? The servant asked. Yes, I said. A basin and hot water, and a door that locks from the inside. Her gaze flicked to my torn sleeve, the claws marks crusted along my side. At once, when they left, I washed the blood away with water that steamed against my chilled skin. The cuts stung, but they were shallow, more insult than real damage. The deeper wounds were inside, raw and echoing. When I stripped off my burned clothes and pulled on the plainest gown in the chest, a dark gray thing that fit too well for coincidence, it felt like donning armor of a different sort, softer, but no less binding. The first council came at dawn. A servant woke me with a knock and a murmured reminder that His Majesty expects you in the Great Hall. I wanted to snarl that I didn't belong to his expectations. Instead, I tied my hair back with a strip of cloth, straightened the borrowed gown, and followed. The council chamber was a long, high-ceilinged room lined with narrow windows. Light spilled in a pale stripe down the center of the stone table where a dozen wolves already sat. Most were older men, gray at the temples, their shoulders draped in furs. One woman sat near the head of the table, posture so straight it looked painful, her pale hair coiled like a crown. Robert stood at the far end, dark armor traded for black leather and a simple tunic. He watched me cross the room with that same unreadable gaze from the clearing. When I reached his side, he placed a hand lightly at the small of my back, claiming, reminding, warning, I wasn't sure which. "This," he said to the room, "is Kate of the—" He paused, giving me the choice to name a pack that no longer existed. "Of the Ash Ridge," I said, steady. Our mountain had always burned easily. Now the name fit. "Kate of Ashridge," he continued, "my intended." The word dropped into the silence like a stone. The elders exchanged looks. The woman with the coiled hair let her gaze travel over me slowly, from bare throat to calloused hands, as if assessing a horse at market. "Intended?" she repeated. Her voice was syrup poured over ice. "Last night she was a stranger chased by rogues. This morning she is to be our queen?" Robert's hand pressed more firmly into my back. "Lady Celine, I was not unaware of our previous discussions. Circumstances have changed." "Indeed," her eyes fixed on mine. "Tell me, Kate of Ashridge, which noble house claims you?" "No house," I said. "Just a village, just a pack." "Rank?" "Omega." The word slid through the chamber like a draft. One of the elder lords actually scoffed aloud. "An Omega. Their future queen." Celine's lips curved, almost pleased. "And how did this bond come about?" "Forgive us. We are confused. Blackstone tradition is thorough. Our king has never spoken of a courtship." I felt every eye on me. Waiting, weighing. I could have let Robert answer. It would have been easier to hide behind his rank. But I had grabbed his armor first. If I started cowering now, they would smell it on me forever. "We met when I ran across your border," I said. "My village was burning, rogues on my heels. Your king stood in their path. I made a choice." "A choice," one elder repeated. "To claim a mate under the moon with no witnesses from your own pack and no blessing from our priestesses." "I chose not to die," I said, voice flat. "If that offends you, you're welcome to take it up with the rogues who started this." A murmur rippled around the table. Celine's eyes narrowed, but there was a glint there now that hadn't been before. Interest, annoyance, both. Robert cleared his throat. "The mate blessing ceremony will be held at the next full moon," he said. "Until then, you will treat Kate as you would any future queen of Blackstone." One of the elders leaned forward, beard bristling. "And if the blessing reveals no bond? If this is some trick, some rogue scheme to get inside our walls?" Robert's gaze went cold. "Then I will deal with it." "With her, you mean?" another muttered. "With anyone who threatens my pack," Robert said. Final. They fell mostly silent after that, though I could feel the questions still buzzing under their skins. By the time the council ended and the feast's talk began, my jaw ached from clenching it. Feasts were worse. In the council chamber, at least, hostility wore the polite skin of politics. In the great hall, it bared teeth. I sat at Robert's right hand at the long table, a cup of watered wine between my palms. The hall hummed with conversation and clatter, punctuated by the occasional bark of laughter. Servants wove between benches with platters of meat and fresh bread. Above us, banners hung heavy from the rafters, black and silver and red. "Smile less," Robert murmured beside me. I blinked. "I'm not smiling. That's the point." He tore a piece of bread, dipped it in stew. "You look like you're planning to stab someone." "I am," I said. "I just haven't decided who yet." The corner of his mouth twitched. Lady Celine watched us from further down the table, her goblet untouched. A cluster of younger nobles hovered near her like crows, leaning in when she spoke, laughing when she smiled. When her gaze met mine, her lips curved in something that might once have been a friendly expression if not for the sharpness in her eyes. "So," a man across from us said loudly, drawing attention. "Kate of Ashridge, tell us, how long have you and our king been acquainted?" He made the last word sound obscene. "Long enough," I said. "How sweet." Celine murmured. And how long has your pack existed? We so rarely hear of new bloodlines these days. My pack existed long before I was born, I said. And yesterday, it died. Is that long enough for you? A hush fell. Celine's smile slipped for a heartbeat before she smoothed it back into place. My condolences, she said. Loss can make us impulsive. Or clear, I replied. Robert's hand brushed my knee under the table in a warning or reassurance. I couldn't tell. That's enough, he said quietly. The conversation shifted, but the eyes did not. By the time the feast ended, my head throbbed. Every word felt like a blade I'd had to parry. The first time Robert came to my chambers in the royal wing, it was not for what the servants assumed. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. About how doomed we are, I asked, dropping onto the cushioned bench by the fire. Because I already have a list. About the mate blessing. He stayed standing, arms folded. The priestess will ask questions. Details. You and I need to be consistent. Lies, I said. Stories, he corrected. Believable ones. So we traded them. He asked what food I hated most. Boiled cabbage, I said without thinking. Smells like wet cloth and broken promises. His mouth curved. You're dramatic. Accurate. I asked what he feared. He scowled. Nothing. Liar. We learned each other's habits like battle maps, the side of the bed we preferred, the way he rolled his shoulders when thinking, the way I tapped my fingers when I wanted to punch something. He memorized the rhythm of my speech. I catalogued the tiny hesitations in his. Some nights he stayed until the candles burned low, leaving the room smelling of leather and cold air. Some nights he sent for me instead, summoning me to his private study where maps littered the table and reports of rogue movement lay half open. We began to move around each other like wolves circling the same fire. Not friends, not lovers, something sharp and dangerous in between. It was late when I slipped from my chambers to the battlements. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my village. The fire. The rogues calling my name. So I went where the air was clean and the sky wide, climbing the narrow stone steps until I stood above the sleeping fortress. The wind bit at my hair and gown, but it felt honest. Out beyond the outer walls, the mountains rolled in dark waves. Somewhere to the east, beyond those ridges, lay a smear of blackened earth where my home had been. From here, the world looked untouched, as if nothing had happened. I gripped the cold stone, knuckles white. I'm still here, I whispered to the night. I'm sorry. The words broke something. Tears came without warning, hot and blurring, spilling down my face in messy tracks. I tried to swallow them, to choke them back the way I had all day. But out here there were no elders watching, no nobles smirking, no alpha king measuring every breath. There was just me and the ghosts. I didn't hear him approach. One moment I was alone. The next, a familiar scent, snow and iron and pine drifted on the wind. Footsteps stopped a pace away. He didn't speak. I scrubbed at my face with the heel of my hand, furious at myself, but the tears wouldn't stop now that they'd started. I stared hard at the horizon, letting them fall. After a long silence, Robert stepped closer, resting his forearms along the battlement beside mine. Our shoulders almost touched. Ashridge was in that direction, he said quietly. Not a question. Yes. He looked out into the darkness with me. I should have known, he murmured. We had reports of smoke on the wind, but by the time my scouts reached the valley, the rogues had already moved on. We didn't know who they'd hit. A bitter laugh scraped my throat. Now you do. Another pause. I am sorry, he said. The simple words undid me more than any grand promise could have. No oaths, no vows, just that. I turned my head slightly. In the torchlight from the tower behind us, his profile was all harsh lines, the same hard jaw, the same scar near his brow I'd traced with my eyes a dozen times in the council chamber. But his mouth was softer now, his eyes dark and distant. You don't have to stand here, I said, voice thick. You can go back to your warm hearth and your sharp-tongued council and pretend your queen-to-be isn't falling apart on your walls. I could, he agreed. He didn't move. The wind caught the loose strands of my hair, blowing them across my damp cheeks. Without thinking, he reached out and tucked one behind my ear, fingers brushing the wetness there. His touch was careful, almost hesitant, as if I might bite. I didn't. I just closed my eyes for a moment, letting the contact ground me. You fought, he said. You survived. That is not something to apologize for. It feels like it, I whispered. They died. I ran. If you had stayed, you would be dead too. His voice was roughened now. And we would not have this chance to stop it happening again. I opened my eyes. He was looking at me, really looking. Not at the lie we'd agreed to wear, but at the girl beneath it, smoke-stained, exhausted, barely holding herself together. Something in my chest cracked wider. Tears spilled over anew. Unstoppable. I turned my face away, embarrassed by the mess. He didn't tell me to stop. He didn't reach for me again either. He just stood there, silent and solid, a presence at my side while the night took my grief. When the worst of it passed and the sobs faded to shivers, he spoke. The mate blessing will be in 3 nights, he said, as if we'd been discussing it all along. They will ask how we met, when I knew. If you can't speak, they will smell it on you. I huffed a shaky breath that might have been a laugh. You're rehearsing while I cry. I am preparing for war, he said simply. This, he nodded toward the distant horizon, was the first battle. The blessing will be the second. I intend to win both. I wiped my face with my sleeve. Then we learn our lines. We do, he agreed. For a while longer, we stood there like that, 2 silhouettes against the cold sky, a king and his false queen sharing the only honest thing between them, the way the world had already burned. They dragged the rogue in at dawn. I smelled him before I saw him, blood and wet fur, and the sour tang of fear curling through the stone corridors. By the time I reached the lower hall, Robert and a handful of his warriors were already there, forming a loose ring around the prisoner. The rogue was on his knees, wrists bound behind his back with silver chain. Burns blistered the skin where metal met flesh. His fur was patchy, scars layering old wounds over new. He lifted his head when I entered, and his lips peeled back from yellowed teeth. There, he rasped. Silver blood herself. Every eye swung to me. I stopped just inside the doorway, pulse kicking hard. You know my face, I said. Impressive, considering how fast you ran last time. A few of the warriors snorted. Robert didn't. He watched the rogue like a wolf, considering whether the meat in front of him was worth the trouble. You were caught trying to climb our western wall, he said, at great personal risk, from the look of you. Why? The rogue's gaze flicked between us. Orders! From whom? One of the warriors demanded. Our commander, the rogue said. I answer to him, and he answers to a higher blood than yours. Robert's jaw tightened. Why send you alone? Because I'm small and quick and not afraid to die. The rogue laughed. A wet, broken sound. We were promised silver. That is worth the risk. The word snagged in my chest. Silver what? Robert asked. The rogue's eyes slid back to me. They were muddy brown, but something sharp glinted there. Recognition, satisfaction. Silver blood, he said. The last of it. My skin went cold. Robert shifted, just enough that his shoulder brushed mine. Explain, he said. The command in his tone was a tangible thing, pressing down on the air. The rogue's lips twisted. Why should I? Robert nodded to one of his men. The warrior stepped forward, grabbed a fistful of the rogue's hair, and yanked his head back, exposing the vulnerable line of his throat. Another unhooked a blade from his belt and laid it lightly against the skin there. Because I have little patience and less mercy, Robert said. Talk, or bleed. The rogue swallowed. A bead of red welled where the blade kissed his flesh. The silver line, he spat. Old blood, old claim. You know the stories, Alpha. A family that thought itself chosen by the moon, destined to rule. They bled white under the knife when your ancestors took the throne. My breath left me in a rush. Grandmother's stories rose like ghosts, half-whispered tales told by firelight when she thought the other adults weren't listening. Of a house with hair like starlight and eyes like frost, of a coup in the snow, of children smuggled out under cloak and smoke. Wiped out, Robert said. Every last one. The rogue smiled. It was an ugly thing. So your historians like to tell it, but blood runs where it will. A branch hid in the mountains, low and quiet, pretending to be nothing. We were sent to prune it. For a moment, all sound faded. I stood in my own body and didn't know it. Mountains, hidden, low and quiet. Ashridge. Kate, Robert said quietly. I realized my hands had curled into fists so tight my nails bit my palms. He's lying, I said, too fast. Am I? The rogue's head rolled toward me despite the warrior's grip. Does your pack name mean nothing to you, little Omega? Ashridge. The ash that grows where fire once was. Silver roots under burned earth. Enough! Robert's voice cracked like a whip. He flicked his fingers. The blade at the rogue's throat bit deeper, drawing a thin line of red. The rogue shuddered, but kept smiling. Our commander was promised a gift if he brought your head back. Proof that the last silver vein has been cut. Until then, he will send us. Again and again. Over your walls, through your gates, into your bed, if we must. Robert's entire body went still at that. I stepped forward before I could think better of it. The warriors shifted, instinctively making room. I crouched in front of the rogue, close enough to smell the rot on his breath. You were at my village, I said. Many of us were. You called my name. Kate, he crooned, our little vein of silver. How? My voice shook, but I didn't care. How did you know who to look for? He considered me for a long moment. There is a mark, he said finally. A thread in the blood. Some can scent it, some can see it. His gaze dropped briefly to my throat, to the patch of skin where my pulse beat just below the surface. Our master has both. Master, not commander. Someone higher then. Before I could push, Robert straightened. That's enough, he said. I have heard what I needed. The rogue's smile widened. Good. Then kill me, King. It will not save her. Robert found me hours later in the small library off the royal wing, surrounded by dust and old leather. You left abruptly, he said. I thought queens were allowed to walk their own halls. I replied without looking up. The book in front of me was older than both of us, its pages thin and fragile. The ink had faded in places, but I could still make out the elaborate script. The rise of Blackstone and the fall of Silvermoon. History? He asked. Lies written prettily, I said. But sometimes even lies forget to hide all the truth. His footsteps approached. He stopped beside my chair and rested a hand on the backrest, a silent question. I pretended not to feel the warmth of him seeping through the wood. What did you find? He asked. I tapped the page. An illustration sprawled across it, wolves under a full moon. One line of them picked out in pale ink, their fur almost white against the page. Silvermoon, I said. That was the name in grandmother's stories. Not Silver Line or Silver Blood. Silvermoon, a family blessed by the goddess, marked in their eyes and hair. And you think you're one of them? His tone was flat, but not mocking. Analytical. I think a group of rogues crossed half the realm to burn a pack most maps don't bother to draw, I said. I think one of them just listed my blood as the main prize. I think my grandmother knew more than she ever said. I closed the book gently. My hands were shaking. I'm not just a stray who ran onto your land, I said. I'm a threat. To whom? He asked. That's the question, isn't it? He was quiet for a moment. Regardless of why they want you, he said finally, the fact remains that they do, which means you are not leaving these walls without a guard. House arrest, I said. Lovely. Protection, he corrected. For you and for my pack. If you are carrying the last spark of some dead claim, I need to know who wants to snuff it out and why. He moved around the chair, so we were facing each other. The lamplight caught the silver threading his dark hair near his temple, the faint lines around his eyes that you only saw when he was tired. You are not just a survivor, he said. You are a piece on someone's board. I intend to find out whose game we are playing. I met his gaze, and if the council finds out, his mouth hardened. They will, eventually. For now, they only need to know that any threat to you is a threat to me. To their king, I said. To me. He repeated. Softer. The word hung between us, dangerous and warm. That evening, the great hall filled again. Another feast. Another round of stares. Only this time, I felt every look differently, as if each gaze dragged across the new weight in my blood. The nobles glittered under torchlight, all polished boots and jeweled clasps. Lady Celine shone brightest, her pale hair worked into intricate braids, her gown cut to show off the line of her throat. Wolves watched her with the hungry respect reserved for something both beautiful and lethal. Robert escorted me to the high table, his hand resting lightly at the small of my back. It burned there like a brand. When we sat, conversations around us shifted into that particular murmur that meant people were talking about us without quite daring to be heard. Halfway through the meal, as a roasted boar was carried in and the hall applauded, Celine rose gracefully from her place down the table. "Your Majesty," she said, voice carrying easily, "might I offer a toast to your inspired choice of bride?" The hall quieted. Robert's fingers tightened around his cup. "Lady Celine," he said, "you honor us. Do I?" She smiled, and it was all teeth. It takes a courageous heart to set aside tradition and betroth oneself to an Omega, with no house, no witnesses, no blessing. Eyes turned to me, sharp and bright. "Strange how the moon failed to whisper of this great love beforehand," she continued lightly, almost as if it surprised even her. A few nobles chuckled nervously. Others watched, waiting. I set my cup down carefully. "If the moon wished to keep our secret safe from enemies," I said. I imagined she would keep her whispers quiet. Celine's gaze slid over me. "Enemies? Is that what you see when you look at us?" "I see wolves measuring whether I belong at this table," I replied. "You must forgive me if I meet teeth with teeth." A murmur rippled. Robert watched me with a look that was part warning, part reluctant amusement. Celine tilted her head. "You have spirit. Admirable in a servant, dangerous in a queen. Good thing I'm both," I said. "I know how to serve and how to survive." She descended the steps from her place and walked toward us, skirts whispering over stone. When she reached the space in front of the high table, she turned not to Robert, but to me. "I wonder," she mused, voice soft now, intended just for those closest. "Does your spirit come from courage, or from not understanding the weight of your position?" "Omegas are meant to follow, little Ashridge, not lead." Heat flared in my chest. The word Omega on her tongue felt like mud. Around us, warriors watched, some with sympathy, some with grim interest. Dominance was a language every pack understood. I rose. "Careful, Lady Celine," I said quietly. "Keep poking, and you might find out exactly what Omegas are capable of when pushed." Her eyes gleamed. "Is that a threat?" "It's an offer," I replied. "Challenge me here, where everyone can see, and we can let the room decide whether I belong." Silence dropped like a cloak. Formal dominance fights between high-ranking wolves were rare in court. They unsettled alliances, shifted unspoken hierarchies. For a supposed future queen to challenge a noble like Celine, publicly, was a scandal waiting to happen. Robert's chair scraped softly as he half rose. "Kate." "No, Your Majesty," Celine cut in, eyes never leaving mine. "Let her speak. If your Omega wishes to prove herself, who are we to deny her?" She stepped back, giving us space in the center of the hall. Servants scrambled away. Benches were dragged aside, creating a rough circle. The air crackled, thick with anticipation. "First blood?" she asked. "First to yield," I countered. "Or first to hit the floor and not rise it enough?" Her lips curved. "As you wish." We faced each other, barefoot on cold stone. She shrugged off her outer gown, revealing a fitted underdress that allowed for movement. I kicked my shoes to the side and rolled my shoulders, the way my old trainer had taught me. "Shift?" someone called. "No," Robert said sharply from the edge of the circle. "No claws, no teeth, hands only." I met Celine's eyes. "Afraid I'll scar your face?" I asked. "Afraid you'll need an excuse when this is over," she replied. The signal came a sharp clap from one of the elder lords. Celine moved first, fast and precise, going for my throat. I ducked under her arm, pivoted, and drove my elbow toward her ribs. She twisted away, her palm catching my shoulder, using my own momentum to spin me. She was good, trained, every movement efficient, meant to showcase her control as much as her strength. I fought dirtier. When she kicked, aiming low to knock my legs out, I let myself fall, rolled, and swept my own foot into her ankles, catching her off guard. She stumbled, recovered, eyes narrowing. "You fight like a gutter wolf," she hissed. "I fight to win," I said. We circled, trading blows. She landed a sharp strike to my cheek that sent sparks skittering across my vision. I answered with a jab to her jaw that snapped her head to the side. The hall's noise faded to a dull roar in my ears. There was only the rhythm, step, strike, breathe. She overreached on a lunge, hand grazing my throat. I caught her wrist, yanked her forward, and drove my knee up, hard, into her midsection. The breath whooshed out of her. As she doubled slightly, I hooked my foot behind hers and slammed my weight into her upper body. We went down together. I landed on top, pinning her arm with my knee, one forearm across her collarbones. She struggled, face flushed, but I had leverage and rage and something older in my veins than her polished pedigree. Yield, I said, breathing hard. Her eyes burned. Never. I shifted my weight, pressing just enough to cut a sliver of air. Yield, I repeated. Or pass out. Your choice. A few heartbeats stretched. Pride warred with sense in her gaze. Around us, the warriors watched, the entire hall holding its breath. Finally, Celine bared her teeth. Enough, she ground out. I released her immediately and rose, offering a hand. She slapped it away and pushed herself up on her own, wiping a trickle of blood from the corner of her mouth. The hall exploded into sound cheers, shocked laughter, low whistles. I felt all of it like heat along my skin, a tide that wanted to drag me under. Robert stepped into the circle, his gaze sweeping my face, checking for damage. His hand brushed my arm in a fleeting touch that felt suspiciously like pride. Lady Celine, he said, voice smooth. Thank you for entertaining our court. She inclined her head, eyes cold. Of course, Your Majesty. It is instructive to see what kind of queen you favor. Her gaze met mine one last time. No more mockery now, just a promise. This wasn't over. As she walked away, the warrior's eyes followed her, then shifted back to me with something new in them. Respect, wariness, curiosity. I stood in the center of their attention, chest heaving, lips split, knuckles bruised. An omega from a burned-out village, rumored silver blood singing hot and restless under my skin. A queen's lie, I thought, tasting iron on my tongue. And for the first time, I wondered what would happen if the lie became truth. They thought I didn't notice when he started disappearing before dawn. The first morning, I woke to the echo of bootsteps in the corridor and the soft clink of weapons. By the time I pulled on my cloak and opened my door, the hallway was empty, the air still tasting of cold steel, and his scent, pine, snow, something sharp beneath. The second morning, the same. The third, a whispering pair of servants in the stairwell. Back already? Did they find tracks? Keep your voice down. If the queen hears, the words snagged in my chest. I stepped into view. They scattered like startled birds. By the end of the week, the rumors were everywhere if you knew where to listen. The king riding out with a handful of chosen warriors, no banners, no fanfare, returning with dried blood on his sleeves and a storm behind his eyes, hunting my ghosts without me. I confronted him in the war room. Maps covered the long table, pinned by knives at the corners. Red markers tracked rogue sightings like drops of spilled wine creeping closer to our borders. Robert stood at the head, braced on his hands, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Candlelight threw sharp planes of light and shadow across his face. You're going without me, I said. He didn't startle. Of course he'd heard me enter. He just lifted his head slowly, eyes dark. Good evening to you as well, he murmured. Don't play polite, I snapped, striding closer. You're tracking them, leaving in the dark, coming back smelling like blood and smoke. You're hunting the rogues who burned my home, and you're doing it without me. His gaze flicked over me, taking in my clenched fists, the tension in my shoulders. You've been listening to gossip. I've been listening to footsteps. I stopped on the other side of the table. Am I wrong? Silence answered. It was enough. Why? I demanded. Because I'm an omega? Because I might chip a nail while you're tearing out throats? His jaw hardened. Because it's dangerous. So was fighting in Ashridge. I did that just fine. You nearly died. So did everyone else. My voice sharpened. The difference is I'm still here. Let me do something with that. No. The word cracked like a whip. It wasn't loud, but it landed hard. Heat flared in my chest. You don't get to tell me how to grieve. I'm telling you how to stay alive. Alive for what? I threw my hand toward the window, toward the dark mountains beyond. To sit in silk and smile at nobles who want me dead while you chase my enemies like they're only yours? I am the one they're hunting, remember? Silver blood. Prize head. You heard the rogue. That is precisely why you're not coming, he said, voice rising. You are their target. I won't deliver you into their claws. You mean you won't risk your pretty lie? I shot back. Your convenient queen. Your shield against questions. You don't see me as a fighter, Robert. You see me as a pet you can lock indoors when the wolves start howling. His eyes flashed. Careful. No, I said, stepping around the table, closing the space between us. You want careful? You should have picked Celine. She would have smiled and stayed home and died politely if you asked. I don't do that. I won't. His hand shot out, catching my wrist as I moved past him. The grip was firm, not bruising, but it stopped me cold. You will not compare yourself to her, he said, low and dangerous. Or to anyone else I might have chosen. Why not? I yanked, and when he didn't let go, I leaned in, close enough to see the thin ring of gold around his pupils. You chose me because I forced you in front of your warriors, because I made you play along. I am not stupid. I know what I am to you. And what is that? He demanded. A problem, I said. A responsibility. A useful symbol. Anything but a partner you can trust at your side when blood spills. Enough. Then prove me wrong. I flung back. Take me with you. His fingers tightened on my wrist. The air between us sparked. Too hot, too thin. I cannot, he ground out. Cannot or will not. Both. The word tore out of him. I will not watch you die. The room went still. Something raw flickered across his face, stripping the king away and leaving the man underneath tired, furious, terrified. My breath caught. That's it, isn't it? I whispered. You're not protecting me. You're protecting yourself. His nostrils flared. You have no idea what you're talking about. I think I do. My heart hammered, but I kept going, pushing where it hurt. You're not hunting them for me. You're hunting them because you think if you kill them fast enough, the past won't repeat, because you can't stand the thought of another mate dying on your border. His grip convulsed. I am not your mate, I said quieter. Remember? This was supposed to be a lie. Something in him snapped. You are not the only one who lost everything, he roared. The sound slammed into me like physical force. His eyes blazed, wolf-bright, teeth bared in something too pained to be a snarl. I know what it is to smell smoke and blood and know it's your fault, he continued, voice shaking. To hear the last scream and realize you sent them to it. I watched my mate die on my boundary stones because I believed I could hold the line. I buried what was left of her with my own hands. The room blurred for a moment. I stared at him, the words sinking in slowly, heavy as stones. Elara. He'd never spoken her name to me, but the court whispered it sometimes when they thought I was too far away to hear. The perfect queen who died a hero. I will not do it again, he said, quieter now, but every word carved from bone. I will not carry another body I love down from the hills, so no, Kate, you will not ride with me into rogue jaws. You will hate me for it, curse me for it, run yourself ragged on these walls, but you will stay alive. Love. He'd thrown it like a weapon, unaimed and furious, but it landed between us all the same, humming in the air. My voice came out hoarse. You think you love me? His eyes shuddered, as if he realized too late what he'd said. The walls slammed back down. This conversation is over, he said, releasing my wrist. You will not follow me. That is an order, Kate of Ashridge. He turned on his heel and strode out, leaving me alone with the maps, the silence, and the echo of his confession pounding in my ears. He came to my chamber that night anyway. I lay awake on the edge of the massive bed, staring at the ceiling. The sheets smelled faintly of him now. He'd spent enough hours here plotting our false history that his scent clung to the linens. Somewhere above, the wind rattled at the shutters. Somewhere below, guards changed shifts. The fortress slept. A soft knock slid under the door. I almost ignored it out of spite. Almost. Instead, I swung my legs over the side of the bed and padded across the rug. My hand hesitated on the latch for a heartbeat before I opened it. Robert stood in the corridor, hair unbound, shadows carved deep under his eyes. He'd changed out of his daytime leathers into a simple dark shirt and trousers, but he still carried tension like armor. "We're not done," I said before he could speak. "I know," he replied. "May I come in?" It was the first time he'd asked. I stepped aside. He entered and closed the door quietly behind him, leaning back against it for a moment as if the wood were the only thing holding him up. The fire in the hearth had burned low. The room glowed with soft orange light. "I shouldn't have shouted," he said. "You shouldn't have treated me like a fragile ornament," I shot back. The words were sharp, but the heat had bled out of them. He nodded once, accepting the blow. "You are not fragile." His gaze swept my face, lingering on the faint yellowing bruise along my cheekbone from the fight with Celine. Something like reluctant pride warmed his eyes. "That may be part of the problem." Silence stretched. I folded my arms, more to contain myself than out of defiance. "You mentioned your mate," I said quietly. "The one who died." He looked toward the fire. "Alara." The name hung in the room, soft as smoke. "She was not born to this pack," he said after a moment. "Like you. She came from the border tribes. Wild, stubborn, forever arguing with my council. They hated that I chose her. Said she was too rough, too free with her tongue. They weren't entirely wrong." My lips twitched, despite myself. "I'm hearing a pattern." He huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. It faded quickly. "She begged to patrol the outer passes with me when the first rogue packs started testing our borders," he continued. I said no. For months, I said no. Then one winter we were spread thin and the attacks kept coming. She wore me down. I let her lead a small contingent while I shored up the southern ridge. He swallowed. I saw his throat work in the firelight. "The ambush hit her patrol," he said. "They used her to lure us out. By the time we reached them, she was already." His hand clenched at his side. "She died on the stones with my name in her mouth. I heard it. I was too far away to reach her." He went quiet. The fire popped. "I swore that night," he said finally, "that I would never let someone that close again. That I would not take a mate, not bind myself so tightly that my heart could be used as a knife. I would rule with my head only. I kept that oath. Until you ran into my clearing and put your mouth on mine." Heat climbed my neck. "Hardly a romance ballad." "No," he agreed. His eyes met mine, bare of any shield. "But it broke something I thought was unbreakable. You infuriate me. You terrify me. You make me want things I buried with her." I looked away. The confession was too much, too close to my own raw edges. "I feel like a ghost half the time," I said, the words slipping out before I could catch them. "Like I'm walking through someone else's life, wearing someone else's crown, eating food that should have gone to wolves who died while I ran. When they look at me in the hall, I can see the question in their eyes. Why her? Why is she breathing when others aren't?" I swallowed, my throat tight. "I don't have an answer," I whispered. "I just keep moving, because if I stop, I'll be back in the village with the flames, and I won't get out this time." When I fell silent, the only sound was the crackle of the hearth. Then the mattress dipped by my side. Robert had crossed the room without me noticing. He sat on the edge of the bed, not touching me, shoulders hunched, elbows braced on his knees. For a moment, we simply breathed in the same rhythm. "You are not a ghost," he said. "You are the knife in the hand of the living. They failed to kill you. That is not your shame." "And Alara?" I asked. "Am I replacing her?" His head snapped toward me. "No," he said, fierce. "She was my past. You are something else entirely." "What?" "Terrifying," he said dryly. "Infuriating. Necessary." My chest tightened. Slowly, cautiously, I reached out and set my hand on top of his where it rested between his knees. His fingers went rigid under mine, then relaxed. He didn't pull away. "I understand," I said quietly. "Not all of it, but enough. Loving someone you can't keep safe, breathing when someone better isn't, carrying a death you can't set down." He turned his hand so our palms met, his fingers curling around mine. The contact was warm, grounding. "Kate," he murmured. My name sounded different this time. Not a command, a plea. The bed felt suddenly too small, the room too quiet. I shifted back, easing myself onto the pillows, not letting go of his hand. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd stand, make some excuse, retreat behind rank and duty again. Instead, he exhaled slowly and lay down beside me, still fully clothed, boots loosened but not removed, as if any deeper undressing would break some line we weren't ready to cross. We lay on our backs, shoulders inches apart, hands joined between us on the coverlet. The ceiling loomed above, dark and unfamiliar. His thumb brushed once, absent-mindedly, over the back of my hand. "This is madness," he said softly. "Probably," I agreed. "Tell no one I allowed this," he added. "They would expect me to start behaving like a sentimental fool." I smiled into the darkness. "Your secret is safe with me, Your Majesty." He made a low sound in his throat that might have been a laugh. The tension slowly drained from his body, his breathing evening out. I matched it unconsciously, my own muscles unwinding for the first time since the fire. We did not touch beyond our joined hands. No kisses, no desperate clutching, just warmth at my side and the weight of another heartbeat in the quiet. For the first time since Ashridge burned, I fell asleep without dreaming of flames. The fire found me first. I woke choking on smoke, heat breathing under my door. A shout rang down the corridor. "Rogues! Royal wing!" I grabbed my knife. The door exploded inward. 3 rogues poured in, eyes bright, claws eager. "Silver blood," one crooned. The first died with my poker through his throat. The second caught my elbow. I broke his nose with my knee. The third raked my side before my blade slid under his ribs. By the time the fourth filled the doorway, I was bleeding, panting, standing in the middle of my pretty queen's room surrounded by bodies. He grinned. "Our master will be pleased." A roar crashed through him. Robert slammed into the rogue from behind, sword flashing once. The body hit the floor. He stepped over it, hair wild, shirt scorched, eyes feral as they locked on me. "Kate, I'm fine," I lied. His sword dropped from his hand. In 2 strides he was there, dragging me against his chest, one arm crushing my waist, the other cradling the back of my head. "I heard them at your door," he rasped into my hair. "I thought I was too late." "You weren't." He pulled back just enough to press his forehead to mine. His hands shook. "Don't leave me," he whispered. The world narrowed to his breath on my lips and the way my name had sounded in his panic. I curled my fingers into his shirt. "I wasn't planning on it," I murmured. Later, when the fires were out and the bodies gone, he sat on the edge of my bed while I cleaned the gash along his arm. "This will sting," I said. "Do it." He didn't flinch when the cloth bit. His gaze stayed on my face, not the wound. "You killed them," he said quietly. "Before I got there, I like to be useful." His mouth twitched. "Remind me never to underestimate you." "Already told you that." The bandage finished. I should have stepped back. I didn't. My hand stayed on his forearm, his on my waist where he'd put it to steady me. "Robert," I began. Whatever I meant to say drowned under the look in his eyes, raw, hungry, terrified, and wanting anyway. He lifted his hand to my jaw, thumb brushing a smear of dried blood from my cheek like it offended him. "We nearly lost you tonight," he said. "I'm done pretending that wouldn't break me." The last of my distance snapped. I rose onto my toes as he leaned down. The kiss landed somewhere between a promise and a surrender. No audience, no performance, just heat and relief, and the quiet, furious joy of still being alive in each other's arms. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "This," he said roughly, "is ours." "For once," I agreed. He lay down beside me without letting go of my hand. Outside, Blackstone patched arrow holes and counted its dead. Inside, with his heartbeat under my cheek and the ghost of his kiss on my mouth, the world felt for one fragile moment almost safe. The council chose the highest roof in the fortress for my judgment. The full moon hung low and swollen, smearing silver over stone and steel. Elders stood in a tight half-circle, cloaks snapping in the wind. At their center, the blood bowl weighted black iron, silver runes, a thin knife resting across its lip. Robert stood at my side, all in black, crown a dark band on his brow. His fingers brushed mine once, brief and hidden, before he stepped forward to face them. "By ancient law," Lord Halvar intoned, "a claimed bond without blessing must be tested in blood under the moon. If the bond is false, the goddess will show it. If true, she will bind it." His eyes slid to me with undisguised doubt. Do you submit, Kate of Ashridge? I looked at the bowl, the knife, the faces that had never wanted me here. Then at Robert. I submit, I said. But not alone. A murmur rippled. Robert's jaw flexed. The ritual requires a drop from each, Selene said smoothly. No more. It will get more if it must, I replied. Before anyone could answer, a horn blast split the night 3 long notes from the outer wall. Alarm. Again. A guard stumbled onto the roof, breathless. Your Majesty. Message from the Western Ridge. He held out a sealed parchment, edges singed. Robert broke the wax. His eyes scanned the words, went hard. From the rogue commander, he said. An ultimatum. Of course. Read it, I said. His gaze met mine for half a heartbeat, then he lifted the parchment so the council could hear. To the Alpha of Blackstone, he read, voice flat. You shelter what is mine. Surrender the silver blood by moonrise, alone and unguarded, and I will turn my pack away. Refuse, and I burn your gates, your fields, and every den between. Signed with a mark I do not care to describe. Selene's lips thinned. They know the ritual is tonight. They mean to use it. How convenient, Lord Halvar said dryly. The wolves who burned her pack now threaten to burn ours. All for this bloodline, she claims. His gaze speared me. There is still time to spare your people, King. Send her out. Call it a regrettable necessity. The wind tugged at my hair. I could feel every heartbeat in my throat. Robert folded the parchment with slow precision. No, a hiss of shock. Your Majesty, Selene said sharply. You would risk the realm for one unproven bond? For an Omega whose presence has already brought rogues to our walls twice? Another elder added. We saw the smoke from her last village. Must Blackstone follow Ashridge into ash? The words hit, but they did not knock me down. I'd been living with that fear since the night I ran. Robert stepped closer to me, so we stood shoulder to shoulder. You seem confused, he said softly. You speak as if my choice is between my throne and this woman. Selene's eyes narrowed. Is it not? No. He reached up and removed his crown. The motion was unhurried, almost gentle. Metal scraped softly against his hair as he lifted it away. For a moment, he just held it, studying the dark band as if seeing it for the first time. Then he turned and knelt, not to the council, to me. The world stopped. Wind whipped his hair across his face. He didn't wipe it away. He bowed his head and set the crown at my feet on the cold stone. If you demand it, he said, voice steady but rough at the edges, I will give this up, all of it. I will step down, walk away from this fortress and the name Blackstone, and go wherever you will have me. But I will not give you to them. I will not watch you walk alone into their teeth to save my walls. Robert, Selene snapped. Get up. This is madness. He ignored her. His eyes were on me, bare and unguarded. Moonlight silvered the hollows beneath them, the scar near his brow, the curve of his mouth, the same mouth I had kissed in fire and fear and, lately, something else. I swore I would never bow again, he said, softer now, only for me. Not to grief, not to love. You broke that oath the day you ran into my clearing. I love you, Kate of Ashridge. Not as a shield, not as a bargain, but as the only thing that makes any of this worth bleeding for. My lungs forgot how to work. Behind us. The council murmured, shocked, outraged, scandalized. The moon looked down, bright and merciless. Somewhere beyond the walls, an army waited for a single woman to be handed over. I thought of Ashridge, of my grandmother's stories of silver blood and fallen queens, of Ilara, whose ghost he still carried, of every time I'd called myself a survivor and felt like a thief. I stepped forward, leaving the crown on the stone between us. Stand up, I said, his brow furrowed. Kate, stand up, I repeated, voice steady. If you're going to choose me, you're not doing it on your knees. He rose slowly, taller than the wind and the elders and every shadow on that roof. We stood toe to toe now, the crown lying lonely at our feet. You are an idiot, I said. His mouth twitched. I am aware. You should have told me sooner. I took his face in my hands. The calluses on his jaw rasped my palms. His stubble scraped my thumbs. His eyes darkened, breath catching as if he'd been struck. "This bond started as a lie," I said. "I kissed a stranger and called him husband because I wanted to live. I never meant to give you more than that." "I know," he murmured. "But you gave me walls that didn't fall. You gave me your secrets. You let me see you break." My throat tightened. Somewhere between the pretending and the waiting for you to come back alive, I stopped lying. "I love you, you stubborn, impossible man, and I am very tired of running from the things that scare me." His eyes closed for one heartbeat. "Kate," I kissed him. Not the desperate kiss from the forest, or the quiet one after the fire. This one was acclaiming, sure and fierce. His hands flew to my waist, then gentled, as if afraid I'd vanish. The world narrowed to the press of his mouth, the warmth of his breath, the way the wind seemed to hush around us. Something tore open above us. The moonlight brightened, pouring down in a sudden, blinding blaze. Heat and cold rushed through me at once, a shock that slammed into my chest and shot down my limbs. Robert gasped against my lips. I felt it answer in me, like a chord struck in two instruments at the same time. Silver, gold. Light spilled from where our bodies touched, threads of molten color twining around our joined hands, our mouths, our hearts. It arced into the air, forming a luminous bridge between us and the waiting moon. The iron bowl at our side rattled, rejected, forgotten. "The bond," someone whispered, voice shaking. "It's real." Of course it was. It had been real since the first time he sat beside me on the battlements and let me cry. The light faded slowly, sinking into skin, leaving behind a faint glow where his hand circled my wrist, where my fingers rested over his heartbeat. Robert drew back just enough to look at me. The reflection of that silver-gold shimmer still danced in his irises. "Wife," he said hoarsely. "King," I answered, and for the first time, the word felt right in my mouth. "Pick up your crown. We're not done." We rode together into the valley. The rogue pack waited below. A dark tide spread across the field. At their head sat the scarred commander, eyes bright, teeth bared in something like a smile. When he saw us, Robert crowned and armored, me at his side in silvered leathers, the mark of the moon still faintly glowing at my throat, his expression twisted. "So," he called as we drew within speaking distance. "The king chose his toy over his walls." "She chose herself," Robert said. "I merely kept up." I nudged my horse forward, until I was one pace ahead of him. The rogue commander's gaze slid to me, full of hate and something that looked a lot like fear. "Silver blood," he spat. "You should have died in your cradle." "Many people have told me that," I said. "None of them managed to make it happen. You won't be the first." "Bold," he sneered. "For prey." I let the insult pass through me. "You were sent to finish a war someone else started," I said. "To wipe out a bloodline your master fears." "Do you even know why?" His jaw clenched. "Because once, long ago, my ancestors stood where I do and refused to kneel," I continued. "They believed the moon chose them, not your masters, to guide the packs. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe they were arrogant. But their killers feared them enough to slaughter children in the snow." I spread my hands. Look how well that worked. A low murmur rippled through the rogues. Doubt, curiosity. "You can keep being their knife," I said. "Or you can choose a different oath. Kneel to me, here and now, not as a goddess-chosen queen, but as the last of a line your masters could not erase. Swear your teeth to me and mine, and I will not spill your blood on this field. We will turn our teeth where they belong." "And if we refuse?" the commander asked. I met his gaze without flinching. "Then you die, all of you. I am done running." Silence stretched. The wind shifted, bringing with it the smell of fear. Not just among the rogues behind me, I felt Blackstone's warriors holding their breath. The commander stared at me long enough that my bones began to ache with the weight of it. Then, very slowly, he slid off his horse. He dropped to one knee. "Once," he said roughly, "my great-granddam wore a silver ring. She told stories of a house with hair like starlight and voices that could quiet storms. She died calling them cowards for standing no more." His head bowed. "Perhaps they are not all gone. One by one, like trees bowing in a storm, the rogues knelt." Robert's hand found mine on the reins and squeezed, hard. I realized my own hands were shaking. Rise, I said, voice thick. We have work to do. That night, the fortress was quiet for the first time since I arrived. No alarms, no screams, just the distant murmur of guards on routine patrol and the hum of a pack exhaling fear it had worn too long. In our chamber, the armor lay discarded in a careless heap at the foot of the bed. My leathers joined his on the chair. We stood in the soft glow of the hearth, stripped down to linen and skin, and the kind of exhaustion that lives in bone. Robert stepped close, stopping when his chest almost brushed mine. His hands hung at his sides, as if he were afraid to presume even now. You asked me once why I helped you, he said quietly. At the clearing. Truth is, I don't know. I just saw you running and thought, if she falls, the world will be colder. It has made no sense since. I smiled, small and tired and happy. Good. I'd hate to be rescued for sensible reasons. His mouth curved. He lifted a hand, cupping my cheek, thumb tracing the faint glow still pulsing under my skin where the bond had settled. You asked me to be your husband, he murmured, to save your life for one desperate night. I slid my hands up his chest, feeling the steady thrum beneath my palms, the warmth that had become as familiar as my own blood. Our foreheads touched, breath mingling, and, I whispered. His eyes closed, lashes brushing my skin. Now, he said, voice barely above a breath. I am only yours. I kissed him, slow and sure, in a room that finally felt like home. If you watched this far, thank you for staying with Kate and Robert through fire, blood, and stolen kisses. Where are you watching from, your country or city, and what was your favorite moment in their story so far? Tell in the comments. It helps shape the next chapters of their world.